Let's dive in with MS Now's Jake Traylor at the White House. Our Alex Tabbitt live from Montgomery, Alabama. Politico's Eli Stokols and University of Michigan economics professor Justin Wolfers. Jake, this latest poll is just one in a long line of bad numbers for the president. There's also a Reuters Ipsos poll showing him at 64% disapproval. An AP NORC poll has his disapproval at 67%. The midterms are now less than 6 months away. What's the White House plan to turn these numbers around so they don't impact Republicans on the ballot in November?
Yeah, Anna, how one White House official recently described it to me is they said in reference to the midterms, we already know that we're cooked. For our viewers that maybe aren't familiar with that slang term, doomed or in serious trouble. And through some of our reporting with my MS Now colleagues, we figured out from multiple White House officials, they are aware of just how much serious trouble they're in right now in terms of what they're actually doing to make amends and to potentially make some inroads with voters. There is a plan to leverage some of President Trump's super PAC, pretty large war chest that they have, to plug that into some key states here around Memorial Day weekend. So to start spending more money. There's also an initiative to move some folks from the White House that are key staffers here to more midterm focused roles. Big Politico, you wouldn't know some of these names, but James Blair, Alex Meyer, these are individuals that worked at the White House through the second administration and are now pivoting to help with the midterm process. But ultimately, as we have these conversations with White House officials, a really consistent through line in terms of strategy is that their midterm plan was to really pivot from war conversation. Increasingly, they're finding Americans are connecting the fact that high gas prices, high grocery prices are connected to the war. They wanted to pivot to other conversations, affordability, things about the economy, domestic issues. The problem with that, White House officials tell us, is Americans know that those things are interlinked. They're struggling to pivot the conversation when it all goes back to the war.
Let's look at the numbers again. Eli, cost of living, inflation, war with Iran, international relations, the economy, taxes, immigration, the southern border. A majority of Americans disapprove of all of that. Have we seen numbers like this before?
Well, we've seen low approval numbers for the last administration and for President Trump's first term, especially in 2020 during the pandemic. So this isn't unprecedented. But Jake is right. And, you can't pivot away from the war when you can't end the war, when you can't figure out a diplomatic solution to what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz to actually make some headway in terms of bringing prices back down. And I think, those numbers, those poll numbers, that reflects a public that is looking at this president and saying this is really not what we had in mind. This is a president who was elected because there was a general sense that he would be better on the economy. This is a president who was elected because people thought he wouldn't get bogged down in foreign wars. And yet here we are. The president heard this from members of his own party. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the former congresswoman, was outspoken about this, saying stop focusing on all these other things on foreign policy and start worrying about people's cost of living. He said that Marjorie Taylor Greene had lost her way, right? He's not hearing that message. He's not hearing a lot of that kind of feedback from inside the administration. And so what you're left with is the president, the Treasury Secretary, other administration officials. Basically, their response on cost of living issues is gas prices will come down soon. That's not all that reassuring. And that's not what analysts, what energy industry analysts are saying as well. And so I think you can see why the public is frustrated when they thought they were getting one thing and instead they're getting more wars and a giant ballroom project.
And Justin, when you look at just the economic numbers, only 34% of Americans approve of the president's handling of the economy, while 65% disapprove. It only gets worse from there. Inflation, 27% approve, 72% disapprove, cost of living, 23% approve, and a whopping 76% disapprove. Justin, is the economy as bad as this poll suggests?
The economy's not that bad. It's people's faith in the future of the economy that's that bad. Economic growth has definitely slowed over the last 2 quarters. We're running roughly at about half the speed you might be expecting, but we're not in a recession. What you're seeing there is the sorts of confidence numbers you would expect if the economy had gone deeply south. Why do you see that? It's because we do face economic challenges. That's not new, but it's that all of our economic challenges right now are self-inflicted. We didn't need to start a trade war. We didn't need to go to war with the Federal Reserve. We didn't need to go to war at Iran. We didn't need to go to war at Iran without having a plan for oil or for any form of energy, keeping folks insulated from the worst of this.
Alex, you've been talking to people as they fill up their tanks. Gas now up nearly $1.50 since the start of this war. What are you hearing?
Well, and it really matters who you're speaking to here in Montgomery. Of course, Alabama, Ruby Red. We've been talking to a lot of Trump supporters who tell us that they're willing to put up with these prices, who believe in the long-term plan of the president, who believe that this war is in the best interest of the country and our national security. But every person that we've spoken to who hasn't voted for the president, who either voted Democrat in the past or sat out elections or voted independent, has expressed a degree of economic exasperation that is just getting stronger and stronger with every conversation that we have with people. I want you to hear what one man had to tell me earlier this morning.
We all got to live, just like he has to live. So keep that in mind. He represents everybody, all of us, poor, rich, black, white. He represents all of us.
Do you think he understands what poor people in America are going through right now?
Not really. No, I don't think so.
You think he cares?
Apparently he don't. Looking at what's going on, apparently he doesn't.
And Anna, the sense of disenfranchisement, it's quite pervasive in Alabama right now, especially as the state legislature here is about to go into a special session. It's about to draw new congressional maps with the goal of getting rid of Democratic seats here. And that's what's making a lot of people feel just like that man felt like he's not being heard. He's not being understood by the president, by the Republican Party, and by the government writ large. Anna?
Jake, as the president faces these plummeting approval ratings, he is standing by his decision to get the U.S. into a war with Iran. Let's listen.
I did something that was, I don't know, foolish, brave, but it was smart. I would do it again.
He would do it again. Administration officials say once the strait opens, Americans will see immediate relief. Jake, does the administration have a timeline for that?
I mean, Anna, they did. It expired 3 to 4 weeks ago, their initial estimates, and we've continued to see the White House and the administration continue to shift. And we've also heard the president continue to say to the American people, hold on a little bit longer. We heard from some of Alex's conversations, people are getting tired of holding on. I will say, new today, the United States military says that they have successfully guided 2 commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz safely, guided by American warships. This is all a part of Trump's newly announced initiative, Project Freedom, to try and get ships safely through the Strait of Hormuz. But that also comes as Iran has threatened to attack any vessels that are moving through the strait without the cooperation of the Iranian government. And that also comes on up against this new peace proposal that Iran sent over to the United States that Iran has said Trump has rejected. Trump earlier, a couple days ago, saying that Iran has not paid a big enough price yet, alluding to this war continuing on. It's interesting, the public and private conversations, because publicly there's still this large projection of confidence. Privately, as we have conversations with White House officials, they are saying they are keenly aware of how pivotal it is that the strait open as quickly as possible. That is the direct line and key to get gas prices down. But in this moment, it's a really pivotal and sticking point in these ongoing negotiations.
It's all about the oil, baby. Justin, OPEC now saying that group will put out roughly 190,000 barrels of oil a day by June, so they're going to open it up. That's still a month away. Will that translate to lower gas prices, and just how quickly?
It's not enough just to produce more oil. You've still got to be able to get it through the strait. That constraint doesn't change. The best way to track expectations about the future is to look, we've got futures markets where people are literally buying and selling oil for delivery in a few months' time. Just before I came on the program, Anna, I looked up the November 2026 futures market. Obviously, that's politically important, November, but it's also just where are things in a few months' time. And what that tells you is that that oil future is as high as it's ever been. And so that's the market essentially saying what's its level of optimism or pessimism about resolving things reasonably soon, and it's quite pessimistic. It sees it being very difficult to get oil to most of the rest of the world, even through the rest of the year.
Wow, Alex, as we just heard there, it's going to be a minute until the economy is able to shake off the dust of this war. And again, even if it were to end immediately, how are people planning to make it through this?
We've heard people say that they're walking instead of driving, that they're carpooling, that they're budgeting, buying less at the grocery store. I remember last week somebody told me he needs to decide each day if he's going to drive or eat. And that's because people feel like their cost of living is just, or their wages are just not keeping up with their cost of living. I want you to hear from Sherman Herbert. He's an Amazon delivery worker and a member of the Army Reserve about how he's feeling in this economic moment. Do you think it's affordable to live in America right now?
I would say not like it used to be. It's like the cost is going up, but what we make an hour or what you make on the job is not, the price is not going up. Like minimum wage and all that, it could be a little better for the help out with people to survive in this economy.
And people are suffering right now?
Yeah, it's kind of hard out here if you're not making at least a good 20 an hour, it's hard.
And Anna, Sherman's frustration is just one of many stories that we've been hearing all morning here in Montgomery, Alabama.